It tells me to the cloud. All right. So, guys, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm super excited to have, oh my gosh, over 150 of you here now. We're going to see how much higher we go. The special education unit does these trainings every single month, all through the year, with the exception of July and December. December, because it's, a break time, and July, because it's your break. But we do offer. However, the majority of our trainings are geared towards primary school. So this August, we really, really wanted to focus on secondary, give you guys an overview of what the disability categories are, some strategies. Later this week, we're going to go into behaviors, classroom management. We really wanted to help high school teachers. And I'm going to be honest with you, I got some really terse emails and WhatsApp messages from primary school teachers who kept trying to register and couldn't for it. But we always focus on them. And this time we really wanted to focus and give you guys some strategies and tools to support our kids with special education needs and disabilities in the classroom. So I'm really, really grateful for you all to come. I think you guys can benefit a lot from this training, but to do that, you do need to participate, engage, ask questions. They're saying throw it at them. You don't have to wait till the end. Raise your hand, put it in the chat. We'll be monitoring. We want to support you guys. So don't be shy. For some of you, this might be the first time you're hearing some of these things. That's okay. That's why we're here. We're all here to learn. So please take advantage of it and don't be shy. Ask questions and engage. We are really, really grateful because these series is being provided by the University of South Florida, USF. This is actually the first stage of a partnership we're engaging in over the next couple of years. We're just waiting for our CEO to sign on the dotted line, and then it becomes official. So shh, you guys don't know this yet, but this is going to be a major partnership between the University of Belize, USF, and the Ministry of Education, Science, and Technology. So you guys are the first to benefit from this new partnership. So I welcome you all, and I am going to stop talking and let you guys take over. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you, Christy, so much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We are over 180. We're almost at 190 attendees, so I'm super excited. My name is Dr. Lauren Ivanovich. I am an assistant professor at the University of South Florida. I'm so excited to be with you this whole week. So whether we have you for today and tomorrow for disability category strategies and then accommodations and modifications, or if we have you for Thursday and Friday, where we're really going to get into behavior. We're going to talk about behavior basics, and then we're going to talk about classroom management within PBIS. I'm so excited to get to know you a little bit, and just a brief overview for you while Sandy is getting ready. Here is I was a high school teacher. I am a secondary. That's my jam. So we're very excited to be focusing on that with you all. I have my team with me here, Dr. Elizabeth Betsy Dune. You'll get to see her this week as well. She'll be in and out of the chat. And then Sandy, Miss Sandra DeWitt. Miss DeWitt is a current doctoral student at the University of South Florida, and you all are going to get to learn from her wealth of knowledge today around disability categories and strategies. So we're excited to be here. Like Ms. Almeida said, please write in the chat and to engage with us, ask questions, and you'll get to know us as this week goes along. Thanks so much. And Sandy, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Excellent. Feel free to keep your cameras on, so I know I'm talking to faces if it's at all possible. If not, I totally understand if you need to keep it incognito. But feel free to jump out if you have any questions, comments. If anything that I'm saying sparks a story, we'd love to hear it. I think every one of us at some point or another has been touched by a student with challenges. I don't think you go through teaching without being touched in that way. Oops. So let's go ahead and get started. As Lauren said, my name is Sandra DeWitt, and I'm a doc student at the University of South Florida. So quick agenda. We're going to go through welcome introductions, discuss the purpose of what we're doing here. I'm going to go through an overview of the student exceptionalities. I'm not a big fan of the word disabilities, so I tend to use the word exceptionalities, although in any of our book and stuff, you'll probably find disorders and disabilities. So it means essentially the same thing in a positive way. But I am going to highlight ASD, the autism spectrum, other health impaired, including the ADHD and other, and then the specific learning disability. We'll go over teaching strategies and inclusive practices. And then we have a product for you all to do, but we'll go through what the expectations for that is. I've got a rubric. I think it'll be kind of fun. And we can do it in online, in groups and breakout rooms, so you can get it done before the session's over. You could do it on your own, either way. And then, of course, we'll have some wrap-up activities and reflections. So, any questions before I begin? Everybody good?
I'm not seeing any in the chat. Just do a real quick reminder that, as Christy said earlier, if your name, make sure your name is the same on Zoom, that it is the name you registered with, so that you do get credit for today. And I know sometimes it gets easy to get lost, so please make sure you're sending those messages in the chat.
Right, and since I'm talking, and Lauren, thank you so much for following along in the chat so I don't miss it. I don't know, well, people came in later, but I do have some history with Belize. I love Belize. I had an 8th grade English teacher when I was in the 8th grade, many years ago, who came from Belize, and she became a very good family friend. And in fact, she became part of the family, and my mom had asked her to be my guardian. So because my dad worked for the airline, so my parents traveled a lot. And I had a couple of opportunities to go back home to Belize with her. So I've spent some time in Belize City and out on the islands in San Pedro and San Antonio. And I'm so excited that we're doing this project with you all. I'm hoping it'll be an opportunity to come back and visit. So I am currently an instructional coach and a behavior consultant at a school. This is my first year where I'm not teaching math. So it's a bit odd for me because that's kind of what I've done for the last 10 years. I work at a school, a private Catholic school in Tampa that serves only students with exceptionalities. I do have a Bachelor of Arts in Russian and a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering. I was a chemical engineer for 25 years. And then I retired and I became a teacher because God saw fit to grant me with a son who has autism, which completely changed my life in so many levels. So now I'm poor. And I got my, do you say again? Maria? Did you want to? I didn't hear what you said.
Go ahead. Keep going, Sandy. You're good.
I have my master's in instructional leadership, and I am trying to make my way through the DOC program. I like to bike and scuba dive and volunteer at an exotic animal shelter. I also like to refinish furniture. But anybody who's a student knows I don't have a lot of time for that stuff. So when I have time, private time again, I'll get into that. And I have a son, 2 dogs, and way too many cats. So those are some pictures of a little bit of my life. So I'd like everyone to type in the chat. There's a lot of people, so we'll just pick out a few. If your teaching style were a Belizean dish, what would it be and why? For me personally, I think I'm empanadas. I'm crispy on the outside and soft and flavorful on the inside. I do tend to bring structure and clarity in my classes, but I do try and offer warmth and creativity to let each child kind of present in a way that's most comfortable for them. And I do have high expectations of my students, but I do have compassion, not making work easier, but to help them through whatever they're struggling with. So let's see.
We've got rice and beans so far, which I love. We got a lot of other people coming in. We have over 240 folks with us, so we're super excited for everyone. So go ahead and put in that chat what type of Belizean dish you would be. Oh,
Boiled up fish.
rolled up with fish,
Onion
onion soup,
tamales.
tamales, breakfast
So how do these
tacos.
foods relate to you, to how you teach?
And just if you might see the collaborate feature. Go ahead and try to not use those collaborate features. As you can see there, they come on the screen. Oh, lots of ones. Okay. Rice and beans because I include a variety of strategies in lessons. That's great. Escabe because sharp and striking. Let's see. Rayano, serious yet amazing and interesting. Takes time and planning. I love that. These are great.
Lovely. And feel free to type. If I say something that bores you, you can type and be interesting there. But hopefully, I keep you engaged within the lesson. I'm going to try to keep everybody on their toes. All right. So what's our purpose for being here? And our purpose when we got together was to introduce you to the diversity of children that you've probably seen in your classroom and maybe didn't quite understood, and that they're individuals that you'll encounter and work with. We want to assure you that all students are capable of learning. They just need to be taught in a way that they understand. And hopefully through the trainings that we plan on doing that will provide you with the knowledge and skills that you'll need to inspire all students to achieve their goals. And I love this little this picture that I found, that if a child can't learn the way we teach, then maybe we can teach the way they learn. It happens a lot in the classes that I teach here when they complain, oh, the student, they just can't do it. They'll never get to it. And if a student isn't learning it, other than the fact that they may not be doing their homework, but maybe they don't know how, we need to keep changing up how we're delivering the material and try and find that connection with who they are with what they're learning. Hopefully some of these trainings will help with that. So who are exceptional students? They have intellectual challenges, learning challenges, physical, speech and language, hearing and visual, multiple disabilities, their emotional and behavioral challenges, and some have gifts and talents. And even those that might seem like they have something deficient can also be a gift and a talent. How many times have we learned from people who maybe have less or learn less or have disabilities that we don't? So, what is inclusive education? Does anybody have an idea? You can type in the chat or just shout it out.
We have lots of people sharing amazing dishes and reasons. So I'll keep an eye for what is inclusive. Oh, catering to all students' needs, including everyone into education. Education for all. Embracing children with an array of learning disabilities. And also, Sandy, asking for a little bit of a slowdown. If you could slow down a little bit, that would be helpful.
Okay.
And letting the chat catch up. There are 250 folks, so we're still getting a lot of different ones.
Inclusive
yes,
education.
it's definitely a mindset. Go ahead.
Inclusive education for me is to make sure that everybody, whatever your ability is, can achieve the desired outcome or the desired goal for the day.
Absolutely. This is these ideas that you all are sharing today just warms my heart, because that's exactly what it is. You are right on target. It's not leaving, it's making sure nobody gets left behind. And give everybody rice and beans. It's so funny when a food one comes in between. All students have access. Access is huge. Can't learn without access. I love it. So this is just a summary of what you all said in the chat, but accepting, understanding, valuing, accommodating, giving them access. Those students that are different, and whether they have physical, or cognitive, academic, social, or emotional diverse from the rest of the group, that we are accommodating everyone. It's creating a learning environment where all students are equally safe, valued, and respected. And let's be honest, whether we realize it or not, we all carry some level of implicit bias. It's part of being human. But when teachers take the time to really connect with their students, to learn what drives them and how they see the world, just something powerful happens. You build a connection with your students, a trust. And when they feel seen, and when they feel and understood, and when they feel valued, that they'll open up and take those risks and engage in a way that they can learn. So what does it look like? It's creating a safe learning environment, diverse materials. You'll learn a lot about that when Dr. Dune comes to teach. Engineering scenarios where all students can participate. Sometimes in my classroom, I have verbal students with nonverbal students. So half of our assignments, we don't use words, we use whiteboards. So they write their answers. So everybody has a chance. And it kind of puts everything on the same level. Plus it makes being nonverbal, it normalizes it. Let's see, taking students' needs into account. And it's so critical to really know the content that you're teaching and really know your students so you can find those places where they intersect and get them excited about learning. So is anyone familiar with People First Language?
So a lot of folks are still giving their inclusive education
I should
examples
slow down a
here.
little bit. I'm
Yeah,
not used to
so
such a large crowd. I'm sorry.
yeah. Oh, it's almost at 300. And so maybe I would just say from here on out, maybe talking through instead of asking as many questions.
Okay.
And we do have one says no, and another says, are you referring to a maternal language? It's an area that we can learn more about. So I would go forward with giving the.
Okay. So People First Language, you can't really talk about disabilities without talking about People First Language. And it's a way in describing a person that you talk about what they are, not what they have. So you're looking at their abilities rather than their disabilities. So instead of saying children with disabilities, or instead of saying not disabled children, you would say children with disabilities. You wouldn't say Down student, you would say a student with Down syndrome. The person comes first. You see the person, the individual, before you see what's wrong with them or what they're struggling with. Imagine if I had a big nose. I would be Sandy with a big nose. I certainly would not want to be called Big Nose Sandy. And it's the same for any of the disabilities that we're going to walk through today. So you would say a student with a learning disability, not necessarily a learning disabled child. Now I kind of have an activity here. Lauren, with this many people, should I do breakout
Just go
rooms?
through it. I would just go through it
Just
as not
through
a.
it.
Yep.
Okay. So, or if you want to unmute yourself and just shout one out, that'd be okay. So what's another way for People First Language way of saying the handicapped or the disabled?
I'm sorry, Sandy, I meant you do it.
Oh, okay. You would say people with disabilities. Instead of saying normal or healthy kid, you would say typical kids or kids without disabilities. And this one stumps a lot of people, handicap parking, because if you're my age, handicap is a very common term. You would say accessible parking. Instead of saying she's autistic, she has autism. Instead of saying he's in special ed, he receives special ed services. And instead of calling someone a quadriplegic or crippled, you would say that he has a physical disability. It's just using respectful terminology. Now, there are exceptions to this rule in two populations at least. The first population is in the deaf community. The communities that tend to identify with their disability, like I'm hearing impaired, and my mom was deaf, and we weren't necessarily part of a deaf community, but it identifies who we are as part of our identity. And that's using the uppercase D instead of a lowercase d. In that case, you can say the deaf person because they have chosen to identify themselves that way. The autistic community is very much becoming a community that identifies with their autistic traits. My son is autistic, and I'm very proud of who he is. And that, again, you could say my autistic son. But the whole point is be curious, talk to the people, talk to me before you call my son autistic son or my son who's autistic. Be flexible and be respectful, right? I mean, it can really go either way in all cases, but mostly with the deaf and some with the autistic communities, which are exceptions to the rule. People first language is the way to go if you're not sure. All right. I had a couple pause and reflections, but I guess with this size, if I'll put the questions up, and if someone would like to, we'll do one for the other. So the first reflection question, imagine that as a teacher, you overhear one of your students using an inappropriate term. Now, as a teacher, you hear the student use an inappropriate term to another student. How would you respond?
So as folks are thinking about that, yes, I love that. The typical Belizean response is, or persons with disabilities tend to refer to themselves as differently abled. So yes, that is exactly what we're talking about here as well, is that we're thinking about folks who are differently abled. In Florida, we call them people with exceptionalities. So, we really are excited to hear the differences and really thinking about how we are regarding language and looking and thinking towards inclusivity as well.
I would disagree with that a little bit. I think the older generation, just like how you said handicap parking and now use accessible, I think a lot of the older generation still use differently abled. But if you talk to young persons now with disabilities, they do not necessarily like the diverse abilities or the differently abled or terms that we used to use around the country. A young man, for example, who is visually impaired, he has openly said he prefers blind. Mr. Marshall Nunes, who is blind, and he leads our disability desk coordinator. He doesn't like it either. And these are just one-on-one, but generally when we are talking about the community of persons with disabilities, of which I participate a lot in, as a country, for us with the disabilities, we are moving away from those terms. It's still very popular within our media and things because it was used for years, but not necessarily that we like it.
I'm glad you popped in on that. I think it's certainly something, yes, it is our responsibility, as Liron is saying, to correct students. And also for us to know them and to be aware, I think especially for those of us who are used to things like handicap parking, to think about, we still need to change our own way of thinking as well. So I'm so glad you brought that up too, Christy.
May I say a situation that I had?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, once I had a student that referred to another student as being crazy, and I immediately told him, no, he's not crazy. He just thinks differently from you do, the way you do. That's it.
Beautiful. One of the things they say is to model it. I mean, as teachers, when we interact with our students, what we call them, how we interact with them, others, obviously other students see that. So modeling the behavior, is another way to kind of, so they understand how to, address others. The next question would be, what if not a child, but another teacher used an inappropriate term? Now, here's where it gets a little stickier. Right. And this might depend on whether or not the teacher's a really good buddy of yours. So I'd say, hey, Lauren, don't say that. But maybe in another scenario where it's not such a good friend, just that modeling or coaching, just being very polite, because we're not here to browbeat anyone into doing it one way or another. These terms and how we address them change to seem to change every generation. What was acceptable in the 50s is absolutely not acceptable now. So just keeping up with the times and being respectful.
Good morning.
Good morning.
May I chime in?
Absolutely. I love it.
That's a great question, and I could sense some discomfort already if I were in that situation. But I think what I could say would be something like, well, so and so prefers this term. Or, I learned this and I wanted to share that now the proper thing to say is. That might be a smooth way of communicating that to somebody that we might not be very close to.
That's perfect. And we just can't be afraid to speak out, because we're helping, we're
Right.
building a nation here. We're building a community. And feeling valued is the first step into being included in that community. That's beautiful. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share? I would turn it into a learning segment. I would bring it to the class and discuss it and let them know why it's bad and how it can be fixed. I'm not sure if it's necessarily a bad and fixed scenario. It's just an evolution. I wouldn't want anyone to feel bad for saying the wrong thing if they didn't have the bad intentions. Like if somebody was being rude, absolutely. But if somebody just said it because that's the way they've said it at home for generations, being gentle and loving, I mean, okay, awareness is essential. Inform the correct term to use, sometimes inappropriate. It's simply used because they do not know better. Yes.
Good morning. Sorry. Could I chime in? What if, from the parental perspective, that the parent doesn't want to accept? So you can't just say anything. Your hands is tied. You say that, okay, the child have a disability, a learning disability, perhaps is slow. How do you approach that? When the parents have a negative response, they don't see anything.
I was that parent for a very long time. When they first told me my son was autistic, I was in denial. And I was like, you just don't know. You just don't know. And you have to realize, I was given this story once about, imagine if you were planning on going to Paris and you learned everything about Paris. You learned what sites you want to see. Maybe you learned some French and you made these plans to go to Paris. And all of a sudden the plane landed in Holland. You didn't speak Dutch. You have no idea where to go. You feel lost. And personally speaking, when I had my son, I felt lost because I didn't know what to do with this lovely, beautiful person that I love very much, but I didn't know what to do with them. So parents have that period of denial. So we need to educate parents gently and with velvet gloves and show them what they can do with their child. I have, like in my classrooms, I would have monthly parent meetings. And parents that are further along in the process of acceptance are really the best ones to help those that are further, not quite there on the acceptance. It took me about a year and a half before I accepted it, and probably 6 years before I embraced it. And then, of course, changed my whole life to accommodate it and hopefully help other parents too. Did that answer your question? What about parents that don't accept it?
Yeah, not really, because as I'm talking and I'm hearing you, yes, at least you at some point had that mindset to say, okay, because
Yeah.
it's like it was behind you suppress it rather than really wanted to accept. But we have in the classroom as teachers, because then it's let's say we include, as the topic is today's inclusivity, right? So we include no child is left behind, so it's included. But the parents, and it's both parents, um really doesn't want to accept. So I had a bad scenario that they misunderstood what I had said, and even threatened to have took me to ministry if I didn't apologize. But push come to shove and everything, when the parent actually told the other parent what I actually said, he said, Miss, you should have spoken to me, because that was not what the another parent told. One parent told the other, the mother told the father. So how could we because then I do think that we really need to be educated on how to bring in these parents, because then they're totally just dumbfounded, for lack of a better word, and don't want to accept. So they know the pressure is on us as the teacher, and then they will come and ask question, but then you cannot, I am using that word, cannot say that, okay, well, your child really needs extra help and this is the way forward, because then you will get into trouble.
In
Dr.
the
B?
States, we have a process that when you do identify as a teacher a child who needs help, we do the paperwork, and then there are whether it's a social worker or a psychologist or someone in the school system that has that conversation with the parent. And Lauren, you might want to jump in
Yeah.
since you're in that boat.
Yeah,
I'm
so
from a teacher standpoint.
I would say I love this conversation. I think it is so important, and certainly something I think is really prevalent, especially in Belize right now, is this. You all are, this is like what Christy said from the ministry at the beginning of today, your first real focus on secondary, even just giving you all the support to provide support to students with disabilities in your own classroom. And I completely agree that I think first we have to know that situation before we can figure out how to approach it, and just kind of how you were saying too, right? No student, no situation is going to be the same. And so when we're thinking about dealing with our parents, I think that's certainly one of the things we are hoping to help the ministry to kind of take that a little bit off of the plates of teachers to have to do. And we're really talking about shifting the belief system about disabilities as from a deficit-based approach to a positive-based approach. And that's going to take time, and that's going to take training, not just on you all, but also for our families and the greater community. So I do not think that we are going to solve that problem today. I think we're going to be able to get you some strategies in your own classroom to help you think about ways you might approach it, and to validate that this is really difficult, especially in the current climate. And so we definitely want to think about the broader picture, but know that we're not trying to tell you you have to do all of this now. And I'm seeing lots of thumbs up, so that's helpful to see. And Christy, I'm sure you
Yeah,
want to
I'm
pop in
just,
here.
I just
Dr.
want to
Lauren.
add in a situation like this, when you're trying to reach out to the parent, you recognize that the student needs additional assistance and the parent isn't recognizing. I think that is when you refer to the special education unit.
Yep.
We are there to support. Many of us that work in the unit, like myself, have children with disabilities. So a lot of times for me, it's about meeting with parents at like coffee shops or whatever and trying to talk parent to parent. And exactly what Dr. Lauren said, we focus on how we can help the student. You know, by recognizing this, then we can provide additional supports, things to close the learning gap rather than putting a label on things. We don't try to focus on the label, but on how we can support. So if you are hitting a wall, which is understandable because this isn't stuff we used to talk about a lot. The stigma is still there. Culturally, it is. But that is what we should do. Special education is absolutely understaffed and we are backed up. But I can tell you that the Ministry of Finance 2 weeks ago approved for us to increase our unit by 3 special ed
Lovely.
officers.
Perfect.
So I will be advertising and looking to hire some more. So we are looking at expanding, recognizing what has been happening and the fact that we are absolutely overloaded. It's taken us 2 years, but public service finally approved the post and finance told us, like, I think it's been less than 3 weeks that we have the finances. So we're going to be expanding there. I'm just responding to some of the comments in the
Yep.
chat. But
So-
yeah, parents, we recognize are an issue. That's also why a lot of these trainings we actually target and invite parents to. In fact, August and December are the only 2 months where we don't have parent trainings. Every other month there is parent sessions as well. But reach out to us and let us help you with that block. I'm going to let you continue, Sandra.
Okay.
Probably you can give us a link or a number because you said refer to us, but I don't see anything. Well, at least I'm here in the system for at least over 10 years, and
Wow.
I'm not so sure how can I get in contact with you guys.
Okay, well, Pedro, you are right. Before NARCE, which is what the special education unit was called, was only mandated to help elementary schools. But we have switched that mandate with the new Belize Education Sector Plan. And so for the past 3 or 4 years, we've been providing support up to the university level. So if you have a kid in school, we are going to help you. We do have special education officers in all districts. We're not getting 3 in each district. We're only going to get 3 added to the unit. But you can reach out to me. I'm going to put my email in the chat and I can guide you. You can also go to the 501 Academy. On that page is the Inclusion Corner, or you could just search for the Inclusion Corner online. And there will give you links on how to reach us. All our contact forms, checklists, and everything is also there. But I'm going to put my personal email there. And then once you message me, I will direct you to the right person. For San Pedro, your officer is Miss Norvea Sabido. She is in San Pedro almost once a month these days because of the number of kids we're dealing with. And was just there for a couple days when we had speech therapists. So I know we've really been focusing on San Pedro and getting help out there a lot due to our numbers. But that is your officer in charge. And I will put my number and my email in the chat.
Okay,
Hi.
thank you very much.
Miss Sandra,
Yes.
sorry, I'm gonna try to not chime in so much, but this is certainly a
No, I
excellent
love
conversation. I agree with Dr. Lauren. And thank you so much for all the things that you've prepared to share with us. One thing that comes to mind is at the school level, if school administrations get their teachers together before the school year begins and really go over things like this, teachers will not have to be dealing with them in isolation.
Agreed.
Every teacher will know how to approach situations like this because the school and staff are of one mind. If that is communicated to parents in PTA, I think it puts parents at ease who have children who require the help that we're giving them in these areas. And a lot of times they are fearful of how other students and even teachers will treat their children. So if
Yes.
they are assured that we are about inclusivity and all these wonderful things, at least when they come to school, they know that their children are in an environment where they will be well taken care of and given the due respect. That, I think that would help a little bit.
That is absolutely the case. And imagine this, like you have that student for 8 hours in a day and how you struggle. And that's what this training is for you can do something with them in the classroom. That parent has that student 24 hours a day, you know, through sickness and health. And so there's resources for parents, for schools to get on the same page, and within the classrooms, those are all pieces that need to be put into place.
Can I just add a bit, Miss Sandra, as a school counselor for It's a STEAM Academy, we have students with special needs, students who have hearing impairment, and also a student in wheelchair. And one of the things that was most beneficial was getting the students on board, because our students are our greatest asset. And how I did that was going into the classroom and educate. Because some of us are still, it's still a taboo to talk about these topics. We tend to shy away and feel as though everyone will understand. We need to be open about it, and some teachers are still not as open. So I'm grateful for these type of sessions here. I also work with parents in parenting sessions, PTA, parenting consultations. So at our school, the teachers don't necessarily have that burden, so to speak, in having to advocate for that child, because that is where my role come in as the school counselor. Just wanted to share.
That's beautiful. And I'm sure what Ms. Almeida is trying to do is get that in a more accessible way for all schools. That's similar to what it works like here in the US. And just so you know, there are teachers in the US that still don't want to talk about it. So I mean it's all a process. And
Hi, morning. Can I please say something? I want to share something.
yeah, of course.
Well, I'm a teacher at the secondary level, but I'm also a mother whose son has autism. We did the procedure and we signed up with the ministry. I sent him the forms, everything, but my son finished preschool and we did not get one visit. And I know that these officers are stretched thin, but it was left solely on myself as a parent and the teacher. And I was so grateful for the preschool teacher that he had, because she has first-hand experience dealing with autism, because she's also a mother to a son who has autism. So she had first-hand experience, and that is how she was able to help my son throughout preschool.
Okay.
He's going into infant 1 now. So I'm hoping that maybe sometime this school year that he would get a visit from the education officer, so the education officer can assist the teacher in giving her strategies that will help with my child in the classroom.
Okay, once again, I'm going to ask you guys, I put my email there. Let me know. We can follow up. I know we evaluated over 300 preschool students last year alone. I have the data to show it, that the forms and everything. So I am so sorry we didn't get to you. Reach out to me directly. I really want us to get into this training so we can get deeper in knowledge about how.
Yeah, so let me begin. So
for these issues,
and I mean a similar and I
send me a message. I give you my WhatsApp and email.
So I think Christy's internet was kind of
and then
going
for all of you,
There you go.
send a message. I'll respond.
It came in there, Christy. So I'll just reiterate what she was saying. we are going to move forward. I think if you have other questions or comments related to the content, feel free. But we have quite a lot to get through for you this morning. So I'm going to ask Sandy to move through some of her engagement strategies instead and kind of give content for a little while. And as Christy did say that she put her information in the chat, please reach out to her directly if you have comments or questions or concerns around those specific issues.
Okay, so educating students with exceptionalities. You can put all of the disabilities, exceptionalities into 4 main categories. And please recognize that these categories are not mutually exclusive and that the individuals could experience challenges in multiple areas. For instance, a person with a physical disability might also experience anxiety or something due to their condition. So we have physical disabilities involving limitations in mobility, dexterity, or stamina. And examples of this include cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, and maybe spinal cord injuries. And we're going to get through all of these acronyms in detail following this slide, but the disability categories would include OI, which is orthopedic impairment, OHI, otherwise health impaired, TBI, traumatic brain injury, and VI, which is visually impaired. And I'm just going to repeat these acronyms over and over again, and we'll have them with definitions in the following slides. But the more you hear them, hopefully, the easier it is to remember. Those are the physical disabilities. Then we have sensory disabilities, and these affect obviously the senses, like blindness or hearing. So we have DHH, which is deaf or hard of hearing, DB, which is deaf blindness, SI or LI, which is speech impaired or language impaired. Then you have a category that includes intellectual or developmental disabilities, and these involve significant limitations in intellectual functioning and adaptive behavior, which impacts their learning, communication, and social skills, like Down syndrome, autistic spectrum disorder, or maybe an intellectual disability. And these are developmentally delayed, DD, typically children under 9, IND, which stands for intellectual disability, SLD, which stands for special learning disability. Specific. I'm not, that didn't sound right. And DD, I already said DD with developmentally delayed. And then we have mental and behavioral disabilities, which are a wide range of conditions that affect a person's thinking, mood, or behavior, like EBD, emotional behavioral disability, and ASD, which is autism spectrum disorder. But we're going to go through these in detail. All right, the first one we wanted to touch on was specific learning disability, also known as SLD. Now, this student is challenged in basic psychological processes. They struggle to understand or use language, spoken or written, that will manifest in significant disabilities that affecting the ability to listen, speak, write, read, spell, and do math. So, if you have a student in your classroom that has a specific learning disability, here's what you should do. In the US, we have something called an IEP. Do you all have IEPs in Belize?
We've recently introduced them. Have been focusing. The first year was for the special ed classrooms. Now more inclusive. We have a loan grant project with the International Development Bank, which will train 500 teachers on how to write and implement IEPs starting January 2026.
Oh, lovely. Reach out to us because we have written and read a million of them. But I've changed it here to say students documentation. Make sure, again, you have to understand your content and you have to understand the student. And in the student's documentation should list their strengths as well as their challenges. And you always want to build on those strengths. You want them to feel successful and to build on what they already know. It's extremely important for a student with a specific learning disability to be very explicit and clear in your instructions and to differentiate instruction according to the student's strengths, just like I said. I'm going to do a quick blurb take a quick detour and talk about differentiation in a moment. For a student with SLD, that extra time is necessary. Extra time in instruction, extra time in allowing them to express what they've learned, extra time in actually doing the assignment. So that put that into the planning. Within SLDs, you'll see a lot of dyslexia or dyscalculia. I'm sure a lot of you have heard these terms. It gets very confusing sometimes about difficulty reading. Dyscalculia is with math. Dysgraphia, graph writing. If you're good with your Latin, you can probably figure out what they all mean. This is difficulty with fine motor skills, dysphagia with language, and so my son had, this was the auditory processing disorder, difficulty hearing differences between sounds. And it's not necessarily just with sounds, but how they understand them. So the learning disabilities or learning disorders is kind of an umbrella term for a wide variety of learning problems. And it's not a problem necessarily with intelligence or motivation. They're not lazy, they're not dumb. In fact, most are as smart as everybody else. Their brains are simply wired differently. And this difference affects how they receive and process information. In my son's case with the auditory processing disorder, it was like the doctor described it to me as, imagine if you were put in another country where you didn't speak the language, but you understand the concept of communication. They're using different words. So I'm hearing this language and I can probably figure out what it means because I have English as a basis. With auditory processing, he's hearing a language while not understanding how to communicate. So it sounds like gibberish. And until he learns how to translate that, that will actually tell his brain what that person is saying. Get a piece of paper, get a pencil, write this down. It might sound like English to you, but it becomes almost like a different language to him. And then that second piece of being able to retranslate it so that it sounds appropriately. So they see, they hear, they understand things differently, but they're definitely, they can learn with the right tools and with the right understanding. So I'm going to take a detour into differentiation because that is a key strategy for a lot of the disabilities. So differentiation is basically planned curriculum that takes into consideration the individual needs or interests of a student. There are 4 different ways you can differentiate curriculum. You can differentiate it in content, which is basically changing what's taught, changing how it's taught, process, changing how it's taught, assessment, changing how it's assessed, doing alternative assessments, maybe verbal, or changing the learning environment, preferred seatings. And all the strategies should be based on student characteristics and who they are. And UDL kind of came from differentiation, where it promotes allowing the student to learn, express in a way that they are most comfortable in doing. It makes learning applicable and promotes intrinsic motivation. So when you differentiate the content, you're teaching the same content or skill that's taught to every student. However, you're just changing up the curriculum used to teach that content. So same stuff, just a different way. So the concept or skill might be different for different students. You can do this by using tiered content. I'm sure a lot of you, I'm hoping you probably use a lot of this already in your classroom. Graphic organizers, key. Highlighting material, so it kind of points out the most important words. You can scaffold, get them to a certain point, and then just give it to them in pieces, the chunking. Let's see. Supplementary text, give them little mini lessons. So this is all about the ideas, the skills, the knowledge and information you are trying to impart. Some people, and this is where the learning styles also come into play. Are they auditory? Are they visual? You need to know what your student's learning style is. In differentiating and process, it's basically the same content or skill, but the manner used to teach that concept or skill might be different for different students. All right. And in some of my classes, I've had classes where the students like to sing. We do a lot of songs to remember things, use mnemonics. Group your students very flexibly, whether you want to do it homogeneously or heterogeneously to support each other, or do a small group to teach one group of students the same thing. Here, your activities, graphic organizers are key. Using manipulatives, you have your concrete, representative, abstract thinkers. So whatever group they fit into, use those manipulatives to support that learning. All right. The third one is assessment or product. So you're still teaching the same concept or skill, but the product you're using to assess is differentiated. In a lot of my classes, we don't have the standard pencil and paper tests. We do alternative assessments where the assignment is designed to meet the standard that I'm given, but maybe they're making a board game, or maybe they're making a project. In the next slide, oops, sorry. So I want to show one with Raft, but you giving them a choice board. That's we do that quite a bit. And you can use it for an entire class that are different levels to scaffold the materials, giving them options, project-based learning, and so that they learn the pieces as they're building the project. A lot of tactile learners learn better when it's hands-on instead of just a paper pencil memory type scenario. I did want to give an example on a Raft. It's basically the student will do a project, and you decide whatever role that they take, the audience, if it's a written or some sort of project, what format they're going to do, write a diary, write instructions, make an advertisement, a campaign speech on whatever the topic is. You can do this in any subject. This one happens to be in math. There's another one in math. Here's one that's for English. And so it builds their engagement because it's something that they can apply their learning to and show you that they're learning the material. And the last one is you can differentiate in their learning environment. This is where the preferred seating comes in. Teachers tend to do it naturally, right? When you have a talker, you tend to put the talker next to your desk so they don't talk as much. But this is also for learning. Students with autistic that are ASD maybe have a higher sensitive to lighting or noise. So you're going to put them in a place that they can learn best. Establishing routines is key. This is all part of differentiating the learning environment. And yeah, learning space, how the space is used, available resources, and then the grouping patterns. So when I'm talking about differentiating for students, I'm talking about content, process, environment, and assessment. You can do all those in different ways.
Miss Sandra,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt, but I love that bit of information you just shared. What's your advice in a situation where people complain when students are given different forms of assessment because of their particular needs in a classroom where other students are maybe doing more standard type tests? We've tended to be more hyper-focused on grades rather than mastery and learning. And that's a culture shift that has to happen. How would you deal with that?
I would actually not just give that assignment to the student, give it to the whole class. And I'm assuming you'd have some sort of rubric built that's
Right.
built according to the standard.
Right.
So just
Is there
say,
a point where there would have to be some divergence as to the assessments all students are getting? Can it always be everybody's getting the same thing?
I'd like to jump in. We are now using a competency-based system, which means differentiated teaching and differentiated assessments.
Right.
So as long as you have your rubric and they are showing you the learning outcome. So I'm not talking about when you're modifying the curriculum or what they're learning. If everybody is supposed to be learning about the Battle of St. George's Key, how they show you that they know that information can vary. If you are not now teaching that to someone else, that's different. But if they're all doing the same learning outcome, you can have differentiated assessments. That's what this new curriculum is about. And the new legislation says it is now law that we are supposed to provide these accommodations, which many times can be a scribe if someone can't write, a reader if someone is having problems reading, doing this sort of thing. It is actually in the law. So if people want to complain, you can say it's a legislation, but it's also the competency base right there, you know, and
Right.
if you're offering it up to everybody, where everybody has a choice of doing an oral exam, making a project, or doing a written, and they all have that, then, you know, it's more about the equity than the equality, I think.
and I also have to say that we have to be very careful on the language that we use. Differentiation is meant for all students. This is not a student with disability thing. It is for all students. You should not be modifying the standards in your classroom. That is for a team to decide for a child. So you can make accommodations for a student with a disability so that they meet the standards. When you start modifying, you are changing what they're learning, and that is what we want to stay away from.
Right. Right.
And,
So
and
in
we're
getting
going
to
to
the
go into that
differentiation,
tomorrow.
yeah,
Yes.
and so
Okay.
yeah,
Yes.
so I took it out of my presentation. So, but the differentiation, this is not just for students with disabilities. This is for all students. And so what she's talking about is giving students choice. You've taught the material. How they choose to prove to you how they learned it, you can give them those options.
Right. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it, and I like what Ms. Christie said when she chimed in, and what you added as well. Just thinking of times when you have like 38 students in a class, and maybe they're doing a particular type of assessment, and you know that one of them at least would do better with another type. So maybe it was the wrong question. I'm just thinking of that kind of scenario.
It wasn't the wrong question. You know, maybe one student does need something different, but do you know that in advance?
Yes,
Do you know in advance?
right.
One of the things I do, I've taught this course, and when I teach this differentiation, you can hand out papers. The other students don't have to know you're giving that student a slightly different exam that shows something else.
See, excellent. That's my point. I've had situations where a student will say, but how come they got that? You know, or
They don't, you know, and I would actually offer it to the class, because again, you're not modifying, which is
Right.
lowering the standards.
Right.
They all have to meet the same standards. You're just giving him, you're just differentiating how he shows he learned. I would make that a whole class thing. Maybe some of the other
Great,
students would
great.
do better with other options.
Thank you.
And there are ways to do it that doesn't increase your workload. Once you get into it, it actually makes your workload a little easier sometimes. All right, so that's my detour into differentiation land.
I'll be
Thank
quiet
you
now.
for your question. Thank you very much. All right, so autism spectrum disorder, ASD. So students who receive and process information uniquely which is affecting their neurotypical development rate, perception, language, cognition, and social skills. Symptoms and characteristics present as you know, in a wide variety of combinations, and they can be severe, profound, or very mild, like in Asperger's. Okay, and I love this quote, so I use it all the time. Once you've seen or met a child with autism, you have met one child with autism. Every student is different. Again, reading that paperwork that discusses the child, you'll know where their sensitivities are, where their challenges are, where their strengths are. So the first thing you would do as a teacher is read the documentation. Providing explicit instruction is key, one step at a time. Hopefully you'll do better than me and not talk too fast, because I'm nervous. There's a lot of people on here, so I apologize. So put up a hand and slow me down if I need to slow down.
I'm doing very well, Miss Sandy.
Thank you. So having those routines and establishing order in your classroom is key, and letting those students know when changes are going to happen. Hey, tomorrow, we're going to have a little routine, difference in routine. We have an assembly. Some students will need a visual schedule. There's different ways you're going to need to accommodate for that. We practice communication strategies and social routines in my classroom all the time. Carol Gray stories are great, or you can even write your own. Role play it with them so that they know what to do when they're in that social scenario. Within the classroom, now it's kind of cool. Like when I first started teaching, it wasn't, but the big headphones, the noise canceling headphones, now it's a cool thing to wear. They help a lot for those students that have sound sensitivities or light sensitivities. They have the light covers. For someone that's hearing impaired, I always thought it was amazing that somebody could hear the buzz of the light in the ballast and in the light bulbs. So calming corners or cool down, they've called it a million different things, but having a space in your classroom, I give them a time, like a card. Okay, 5 minutes, and then you got to come back. It's not a place to stay all day. Give them a place to regroup is also very important. And if you don't already use graphic organizers in your classroom, those things just help students organize the information that you're giving them so they can visualize it, and it helps them organize it into their background knowledge. So graphic organizers are key in any classroom, really. So, and make sure whatever information, especially important information, is to give it in different formats, whether it's visual, written, stand next to the student, ask questions and have them respond to make sure that they did understand it in the way they should have understood it. And if they're not good at taking notes, like the guided notes that you all have today are lovely for any kind of instructions, or even just assign someone to take notes for them.
Hello.
Any questions? Yes, hello. Yes, Miss. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
So I am hearing you speaking about developing routines and so on. But in our high school classroom, they would have 7 different teachers maybe for the week. How do you develop routines with the students when they're seeing 7 different people who may require 7 different ways of performing within that particular room? I understand it can work pretty well with primary schools, because in our primary schools, for the most part, they see 1, maybe 2 teachers. And that's if the primary school engages in the teachers teaching different subjects. But how do you establish things like routines when you have 7 different individuals that will be coming into that classroom?
I love this question because I taught in a secondary environment, 9 through 12, for a while. Ms. Lauren will go into detail on PBIS, but you have a school-wide system, but the classroom, that's your kingdom. So you shouldn't have to do it like Mrs. Jones does it next door, because that doesn't work for your style, your teaching style, or your classroom. You have to communicate that. And I think students are capable of behaving one way in one classroom and another way in another. I mean, when I say behaving, doing the right things, even if the rules change. If they go to church and then they go home at dinner and they hang out with their friends, those are 3 different settings, which they behave in 3 different ways. The same is for high school students. If they're in 7 different classrooms, they can learn to behave, that there are 7 different rules in those different settings. The point is to communicate that to them. PBIS is a great system to help with that communication, or it's just a matter of building classroom rules and being consistent and being positive. And thank you so much for today, coming in and sitting down and getting your pencil out. The other teacher might not require that, but you do. And I've seen that it can work as long as the teacher, you have a visual schedule, you say it for the first month every day, and prompts sometimes for those few that still straggle and don't do those routines that you have set up in your classroom. I've seen it work, but it takes a little upfront work with the teacher, but it makes the rest of the year really nice because they know exactly what to do when they walk into their classroom. Miss Lauren, if you're still there, is there anything you want to add to that? Okay, she's not
Sandra,
there.
Lauren's not here, but I'm here, so, yeah.
Does that, oh yeah, so, so there are ways, even in a high school scenario, but you've got to be consistent. You've got to build that relationship with your students, and you've got to make it known what you want from them very explicitly in writing and pictures and however you need to do it. Did that
build
answer your question?
As you said, Miss Lauren will build on that on Thursday and Friday.
But did that somewhat answer your question,
Yes,
Ms.
yes,
McDougal?
yes, I understand that what I'm looking at is for the students with the disability that have been identified. I'm making sure that whatever I'm considering also includes them. So I'm just checking.
Okay, so you're saying that the student with the disability, if something works in your classroom, you're wondering if the other teacher's doing the same or different?
Right.
Okay, that's going to be that first off, it should be in the documentation, because in the US, we are required a minimum of once a year to update that information in their documentation. I'm sure it's a similar structure, and Ms. Almeida can correct me if I'm wrong. That information is regularly updated on what works for the student and what doesn't. But other than when you have your team meetings with the other teachers in the class, ask them, talk to them. Hey, Johnny's really struggling with this. What do you do in your room that works? Because it does take a very individualized style to work with our students that have the individualized challenges. Did that help at all?
Yes.
I hope.
One last heads up.
Yes, ma'am.
We don't have individual rooms. The students have their room. We tend to move to the students. They don't move to us.
Oh, so the students have the room and the teachers change?
Right.
Interesting. Okay, so it's kind of, I mean, then probably this is where heterogeneous groups might work really well, because if the same students are together all day, the other students are going to help support that student that's struggling in a classroom community. But definitely talk to the other teachers to see what they do if you're not sure on how to work with that student. And Dr. Doon, feel free to jump in.
I was going to say, this sounds like, again, the importance of building a classroom community early on in the teaching. And this is something we always share with our students, that it's important to spend the first couple of days of the school year to build a classroom community, where as a a community, you develop your rules and procedures. And it sounds like if teachers are moving in and out, that might be a collaborative experience where everyone comes in the first day and works together and builds that sense of community in the classroom. And then the teachers then kind of are on the same page. But like you said, I think it's important that all of our students understand that we each have our different personalities and styles of teaching. And as you mentioned, you might be funny and I might be serious, and the students learn that very quickly, even our students with varying needs. And so they understand that, and then they will adjust. But I think Lauren will get into that a little bit in her presentation on terms of community, and I'll throw in a little bit of in my presentation tomorrow about building community, because I do think that's really important.
Now, like in my school that I work at, we only have exceptional students. So we don't just spend the first couple days, we spend like the first month in really building those routines. But our students change. We don't change classrooms. All right, so that's other health impaired. All right, this is where the ADHD falls under, the otherwise health impaired, and this includes a wide range of conditions. In the IDEA in the US, of all the categories, your other health impaired is where everything kind of falls. That's a catch-all disability. Whether you have Tourette syndrome, diabetes, heart problems, but ADHD, which is something that Ms. Almeida wanted us to address, and we all know leads to a lack of concentration. And again, students should carefully read that documentation and differentiate the instruction toward the student's strengths, because once they're engaged in something, and sometimes you have to do it so that it changes for them. I have several ADHD students in the classroom. The key here is to focus on that executive functioning skills with them to help them learn. ADD or ADHD is one of the most frequent medical conditions that qualifies under OHI. And as we know, it is about high activity and a struggle with concentration. So the activities that you do, you're going to want to work on their working memory and on flexible thinking. Again, those graphic organizers, teaching them organization is key here. And it also gives them the next steps. And off to the side, I have fidget spinners in my room that the students, I allow them to play with them just to get out some of that energy. This is not about them being bad. This is more about something they're learning to control. All right. So of the categories that I've mentioned, which of them do you feel most comfortable supporting, and which of these categories do you feel most challenged in? So for the rest of the week, we can kind of gear what we're doing. You can either type it or shout it out.
I think for me, ADHD is the easiest one to deal with, because in some cases, it only requires a teacher to repeat what they are doing, and they can do it by focusing on one student, then another one, and it's the same thing repeated over, and it reinforces your goal or your information that you want to easier, and keeps everybody attention.
Keeps everybody. One of the things, I have a student who likes to shout out things throughout the class. So a strategy that works with him is I get 3 sticky notes and I put it on his desk. And I tell him, you're welcome with these 3 sticky notes to shout out whatever you want, but you only get 3 sticky notes. So when he's got something tangible in his hands, it actually stops him because he'll be like, Miss DeWitt. And I said, are you going to use a sticky note for that? And he'll be like, oh, no, never mind. And then, or he'll say, yes, for me, it's important to shout out. Here's my sticky note. So I give him those 3 times to be who he is, celebrate his character. But the rest of the time, we also need to, I need to create those boundaries in my classroom that I have rules that you can't shout out 25 things in an hour class. So you have to find those little things that work for that student and for you, because sometimes something that works for one teacher doesn't necessarily work for another. The SLDs are difficult, yes, because there's such a wide range, and you have to figure out where they're struggling. And I'm hoping that Miss Almeida, and of course will definitely support, is coming up with those resources and curriculum that can help with those students. ASD is often known as they have splinter skills, where if you've noticed, sometimes socially they might be challenged in those social situations, but then you can take them to the classroom and teach them physics. As a chemical engineer, ASD students were always my favorite because maybe they were socially struggling, which I can help them with discrete trial training. ABA is huge, or other approaches, PBS. But then I could go in and you can really, they see things in a different way. So it makes the teaching so exciting. You can do things with ASD students that you couldn't do with the student that's neurotypical because they don't think in a straight line. If you embrace the excitement of teaching these students, it becomes a very interesting process. Let's see, ASLD, challenging, ADHD. I know the ADHD sometimes tests my patience. I struggle with them sometimes too. Okay. So the SLD. So maybe we'll focus on, okay. So maybe even some of the case studies I have at the end might help with some of that. All right. Now these are not ones that Ms. Almeida specifically mentioned, but they are one of the 14 of the categories. So intellectual disabilities. This is where a student with ASD might have a high IQ in one and a low IQ in another, where students with intellectual disabilities are very even. It's typically below a 68 in their IQ, and they struggle in their adaptive behavior. So these are your students who perhaps have Down syndrome and they learn best by practice and processes. They learn best by using very concrete examples or concrete manipulatives in any subject. Graphic organizers, of course. Patience is huge with a student with IND because you might need to repeat yourself several times and they may not remember from one day to the next. And always break down material into manageable chunks, not giving too much at one time. Look at the white space on your paper, make sure it's not all filled in with information. Leave that white space there so visually it's more appealing. I created this slide to kind of help. So if the student's struggling with following multi-step directions, it's best to use visual schedules or task cards with photos on them. I've used that quite a bit in my classroom. And then break tasks into single step responses and prompts. Modeling is key. Sometimes just showing them how to do it over and over again, they'll get that routine. And if you've never used them before, first then boards are great. Basically an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper cut in half, and on one side, if you do the ruler work, then I'll let you play with the phone. So it kind of reminds them, if you do this, then we'll do that. Or first we do this and then we do that. Knowing what comes next is really important for our students because that anticipation builds up the anxiety. If they don't want to do this task that you're asking them to do, or not knowing what the next task is going to be. If the student struggles with abstract concepts, use concrete manipulatives. And then connecting those experiences to personal experiences has always worked well. So they can kind of put it in their web of background knowledge that they have, using graphic organizers. And pre-teaching vocabulary is something I do in all of my classes. I do teach my classes to standards, and I use the vocabulary. I don't baby it down. So I always teach the vocabulary first. If the student struggles with generalizing their skills, practice them in multiple settings. And then making mistakes okay. I have a rule in my classroom that says you have to make mistakes because I make them all the time. Making mistakes okay. A lot of our kids, couple of things. They have either learned helplessness or they won't work because they don't want to make a mistake and we don't have the patience, so we just kind of do it for them. They've learned that. And the other one is I have several students who are afraid to try because they don't want to make mistakes. So creating an environment, classroom community, if you want to keep using the same terminology, where mistakes are okay, even celebrated, is very important. And then reinforce natural consequences and real world feedback. If a student is struggling with applied skills like reading comprehension, use adapted tasks. This is where modifications come into play a little bit, so be very careful. Teaching the WH questions explicitly, use story maps. These are versions of graphic organizers. And then pair a reading experience with a real life experience so they can see and feel and touch and experience the words that you're reading. If a student struggles with social and motor skills, structured play is good. And then do a lot of kinesthetic activities in your classroom just so they can strengthen those abilities, and of course, prompting and reinforcement. And if a student struggles with communication, use your your augmentative and alternative communication tools, your iPads or whatever tool the student might have, communication boards. Keep language clear, concise, and consistent. That would be true across the board. Repetition, and the hardest thing is always wait time. Once you get to know your students, you kind of realize how long you have to wait before they'll actually jump in and risk getting an answer. So wait time is very important, but not less than 3 seconds. Visually impaired. I think everybody's probably pretty good with this one. Students can't see. So differentiate your presentation methods. Again, you don't want everything in just visual format. You want to couple it with auditory or tactile so that they can have access to the materials you're trying to teach them. Deaf or hard of hearing. Same thing, multi-modular presentation styles. I work best when I have a visual with me. If you told me everything auditory, I probably would only get half the information. I don't use sign language. Some students do. I use closed captioning for everything that I do. Be animated, speak with your hands, make it engaging. So a traumatic brain injury, this is an acquired injury to the brain caused by an external force. I heard a saying the other day that said, disability is the only group that you can join at any time in your life without warning. So, and I think this falls under that category, where students have accidents, modify their work assignments, and avoid clutter. Don't make it overwhelming. providing that extra time and scaffolding the material, just giving them in chunks so they can get to that standard that you're working towards. A lot of students with traumatic brain injury do have difficulties with concentration, memory, memorizing. Emotional behavioral. So this is not just a student who's having an outburst because they didn't get their way. This is where a student is having an internal or external outburst that doesn't quite make sense in the situation. So it can't be traced back to somebody just making him mad or something like that. It's very much, it starts internally and it affects the way they take care of themselves, the way they have social relationships, how they adjust personally, definitely addresses their academic process, progress and classroom behavior. So in the States, we have FBAs, behavior plans. I'm sure you all have something similar. For these type of students, you really want to make sure that there's a behavior plan in place. So all the teachers going into the room and teaching all handle it in a very consistent same way. Remember that this is external and internal. So you don't always see they can be very self-destructive and they can destruct your classroom. Orthopedic impairment. Oh, I know we're running late, so I'm going to try not to go too fast, but I am going to kind of go, this is 12 o'clock now. Orthopedic, this is where they have a skeletal issue. Typically our students in
Sandra,
wheelchairs.
just real
Yeah.
quick, if you need more time, you can add it on to the end of mine tomorrow, so you don't rush. I just want you to know that.
Okay. I think there's, I have about 2 more slides on this and then the product. So I just want to be able to go over the product.
No worries.
Oh, thank you though. So again, read the documentation. And with these students, you're going to have to be flexible in your scheduling and your seating. Make your room, make them feel part of the room, make them feel valued. If they're in a wheelchair, make sure they have a way to get the supplies that they need, that they are not put in a position where they're always having to ask for help. But we do want to help our students self-advocate, but we don't want to make them feel like they are not independent. Oops. Just lost it.
It's in the corner.
I just lost it. Can you guys still see the presentation? Where'd it go?
Yes.
We can hear you, but we cannot see you. I'm seeing a really nice picture of your son.
That's my hair now. Yeah, I somehow lost the presentation. All right, here we go. Okay, let's share again. Let's try this again. We're almost done. And I have a copy of this for you that I'll put in the chat. Okay. So, arrange the room so they have can everybody see it now? Oops, share.
No. Yeah. Okay, it's coming.
All right, we're good. Sorry about that. Speech or language impairment. So speech is when it's a muscle format issue where they can't make the sound. And language is where they can't get their meaning across. So one has to do with sounds and the other has to do with meaning. And then, of course, you have your expressive language where they're expressing themselves, or receptive where they're trying to understand. And the expressive and receptive all comes with the understanding or language impairment. So differentiate your responses and your participation. communicate with your speech language pathologist on what they do, or give them information that they need to work on so the student can be successful in your room. Deaf blindness. And this is where Dr. Dune will go into detail that universal design for learning works for all the students, but specifically in this situation, using the technology tools and having everything in tactile format. Multiple disabilities is where they have more than one of the categories listed that we just spoke about. All right. Kind of to sum this up, to be an effective educator, it's critical. You're familiar with their documentation. Include the student in that learning process and know their needs. Know your content, know their needs, their strengths, so that you can build on them. Include appropriate accommodations. Be wary of the modifications. Talk to your ESE group before you do any modifications, but accommodations, phenomenal. Differentiate for everyone. Communicate with an IEP team or with your service team, and then always encourage your students to self-advocate and be independent. Now, I don't know if we have time. I have this little Kahoot game to practice the different terminologies, but in the case of time, we're going to kind of skip over it and let's go into the assignment. All right. I'm going to give you all 3 different scenarios. You can pick one scenario and you're going to identify the disability category, the barriers to learning. You're going to recommend some strategies and then write a little reflection. The whole thing shouldn't be more than 1 page. And you'll turn this into Miss Almeida. I'm going to walk through the 3 scenarios quickly, or not quickly, but walk through them to make sure you understand, and then you can do them on your own time. I also have a rubric that goes with it that I'll put everything in the chat.
This is based on the chat. I'm sorry, Sandra. Student participants are asking that most of their students are not diagnosed and that they haven't been screened for disabilities. So I think based on the information you've provided today is where you're going with this.
It will be, and let me show you, like, here's the first scenario. It will be very obvious based on what I've discussed in the presentation, which I'm going to drop a copy of it in the chat. They could probably give a best guess on what they think that disability is. So here's scenario 1, Marcus and the missing assignments. So he's a 10th grade student who excels in verbal discussions, but consistently struggles with written assignments. His essays are often incomplete and he avoids tasks that require extended writing. Teachers note that he has difficulty organizing his thoughts and often forgets multi-step instructions. He's failing English due to missing assignments and poor written performance. His teacher suspects a learning disability, but isn't sure how to support him effectively. So in your 1 page, you'll identify the likely, identify barriers to his learning, just pick out something from the text, and then recommend 2 or 3 strategies which could come from directly from your experience or from the slides, and then a reflection, maybe what something that you would do. Scenario 2 is a 9th grade student who enjoys science and excels in factual recall. During group activities, she becomes overwhelmed by noise and unpredictable peer interactions. She often shuts down or leaves the room. Her peers are unsure how to include her. Jasmine's science teacher wants her to participate in labs, but doesn't know how to structure the environment to support her sensory and social needs. I mean, just as a group, what do you think this disability is? What would your guess be? Yes, exactly. So they're pretty straightforward. What do you think the first scenario that we did, what do you think that one fell under?
Correct.
Ms. Vargas, absolutely. Yes. So this probably would be more of a specific learning disability. And then our third scenario, Tyrell is a 12th grade student who's energetic, passionate about sports, and thrives in fast-paced environments, group work. However, triggers challenge with attention, impulsivity, and emotional regulation. He may interrupt, shut down, or react defensively to fear feedback. Teachers note occasional refusal to participate, isolation with verbal output bursts when frustrated. Still, Tyrell shows strong ideas and leadership when supported effectively. So, and in a team-based civics project, Tyrell is interested but already frustrated with his group. His teacher wants to promote meaningful engagement while supporting his focus, peer interactions, and emotional regulation. What do you think his disability might be? Yeah. Perfectly right. So, and maybe at the, so just do your best guess, and I do have kind of a cheat answer sheet that I'm going to give to Miss Almeida, but you can reach out to me for questions as well. All right. So I know we're running out of time, so I'm totally okay we'll just skip these. But if you were Marcus, Jasmine, or Tyrell, what would you need most from a teacher? And then we're gonna do an exercise on which word captures your biggest takeaway. My address is in here. Let me put the presentation in the chat so you have it. And if there are any questions, feel free to, reach out.
That was wonderful, Sandra. Thank you.
I'm sorry it ran long,
Wonderful.
but
Don't be sorry, it's information that we need.
I'm trying to put it in the, say that again?
That it was great information.
Don't be sorry, it's information that we need. It will do us good. Thank you.
Just wait, you have two wonderful professors coming after me. I'm like the pre-show.
I would have loved for us to have had time to do the Kahoot because I bet the terminologies would have resonated more with us in the form of play. So I hope that we
Anybody
could.
who wants to stay, I am happy to stay. If you
Okay.
want to do, we can jump back. I'm
You
trying
have a
to.
few minutes to do it.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question. We in Belize, we are catching up with learning about all this that you just taught us. What does a teacher do when maybe they're finding out that they themselves are actually part of the community of persons with diverse abilities? Like in looking at what you just showed us, right? And in reading the material, a person gets to understand that, maybe this is why they themselves were having difficulties growing up and maybe still having difficulties in the teaching profession because they themselves might have might be differently able in one of these that you've given us. How does a teacher then deal with that?
So let me make sure I get your question. So if the teacher themselves feel like they might have one of the disabilities and went undiagnosed?
Maybe it's right.
I have several friends, and I'm not ashamed to say I'm in my 50s. who have recently been diagnosed. So, I mean, with all the new information and the new medical that comes around, you know, I think there are a lot more neurodivergent people than know they're neurodivergent. What makes a world a beautiful place is, and I don't know what sort of facilities. I would go to your doctor. I mean, am I answering your question? You're saying, what does that person do?
I was going to
Yeah,
say, also strategy wise, the biggest thing, because in our teacher education program, many of our students come into the program because they themselves, like you mentioned, Jolie, come in and understand, oh my goodness, I have ADHD, I have this, and they are diagnosed later oftentimes, but they come in and the biggest thing is I say, okay, you can no longer use your whatever a diagnosis you have or disability that you've recognized as a crutch, but as a way to model and support for your students things that you do. So if you need a planner to stay organized, if you need things broken down, model and support and show your students that you also have this and can do these things. And then we also talk about famous people that have disabilities like Einstein. And, you kind of go through those things so that our students see that there's promise and hope, that we're looking at this as not as a deficit model, but as an asset. What assets do you bring? So I think that's a way to approach it. It doesn't take an official diagnosis to realize that your brain just pops around and you're constantly going in 10 different directions. So you may have some ADHD, but it does take some strategies to be able to rein it in and to work and complete those things. Sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to, I
no,
think it was,
beautiful.
one
I'm
way
trying to figure out how to share, how to put my document into the chat. It doesn't work like Teams. Okay, so do we want to do the
Is the admin here? Doesn't allow you to share stuff.
Yeah, Christy can put it in the chat because she has a copy.
yeah, because
we have a
email
platform.
it to you, Miss Christie.
We have a platform that we should be using. So I think whatever you need for us to get, you need to send it to whoever is in charge here, and then they should sorry, upload it to the platform so that we have access to it.
Okay, I will make sure you get that. And I
They will
also have
place it on the TLI. Yes, that will happen. It'll go on the TLI with everything else.
But let me go ahead and put the Kahoot back up for those that want to put time into it. I'm glad we're going to do it. I was sad when I thought I'd have to skip it. There we go. Everybody ready? Let me,
Before you do that, Miss, I am in the TLI and then I don't see a space where we will upload the assignment. So maybe.
Somebody,
Okay.
Hello, guys. Oh, go ahead, Ms.
Hello.
Cooper, please.
Yes, the TLI page will be updated. It will include the directions that are needed for the assignment. It will include the assignment, and everything that we need will be uploaded. I will check that after the course is over, and I will make sure that there's a space for you to also upload. Remember, you need to upload it in that place in particular, and not like previously mentioned, to send